What is up, Maryland basketball fans? Welcome in to another Fear the Podcast. I'm Matt Modderno, pleased to be joined here again by Bryce Hendricks. He's an assistant coach at Big Bend Community College and the host of the Upside Swings podcast, the best NBA draft podcast. If you want to get smart on all the guys to know before an upcoming draft, hopefully Maryland will have some more guys to talk about in this upcoming draft. We'll see how it goes. But Bryce and the gang do an amazing job. Bryce, thanks for coming back on, and how are you?
I'm great. I really appreciate coming on every time. You and I feel like, have done at least one pod every year
Yep.
since I've basically started this. One way or another, we're always doing something. So it's always great to be back on and chatting from the other side of the country.
I love it, man. Yeah, this is great. This is the best thing about the internet age and podcasts and all this kind of stuff is you can long distance get some hoop talk in. So I appreciate it. For folks listening to this one, we're getting into the nitty gritty here today. This will not be a superficial, here's what Buzz does on offense and defense kind of thing. Bryce is as smart as it gets about this kind of stuff. So we want to really break it down. This is for the basketball nerds in the Maryland fan base here. Like we want to get technical with it and just talk through what they did. I think Bryce will maybe focus mostly on what they did at Texas A&M. I think you and I talked about this before we recorded, but I think that's what's most going to translate here to at least this year's Maryland team. And maybe if there's some other wrinkles we'd like to see them incorporate from past teams or whatever, we can talk about that. But that does seem to be what they're trying to recreate here is a little bit of Texas A&M East, and maybe they get some better players in here to do it long term here. But let's just start on the offensive side of the ball here and get into it a little bit. I'm going to give you just a really high level. Here's what I see. Tell me where I'm right, where I'm wrong, and then wherever you want to take it from there, we can kind of do it. But a lot of ball screens. They seem to want to get these guards going downhill. They're not afraid to post up some of the bigger guys and give them a few touches. Almost exclusively, 4 out, 1 in, or maybe even 3 out, 2 in. I don't remember seeing much of this team ever going 5 out, which the more modern basketball teams get, I think the more popular that is. Buzz is more likely to go, 3 out, 2 in than he is 5 out. But just a lot of deliberate pace. One of the 2 stats I pulled in preparation for this is just talking about how they're usually were in the bottom half of pace nationally while they were at Texas A&M, which I think is I don't know, maybe not a great thing for this particular roster. I would actually like to see this group play a little faster, but we can get a little bit more into that here as we go. But any key things that you want to take? Did I mess anything up there from what I'm seeing here, or anything you want to kind of hit on based on that?
No, I think that's an accurate way to frame it. It's definitely a lot of high ball screen in terms of if you were to break down the schematic ideas. I would say that, you mentioned modern basketball. I think Buzz is someone who has his kind of finger on the pulse of modern basketball. It's just kind of in a different way than we're used to. What his Texas A&M teams were really good at generally was winning possession games. And modern basketball for a while, and you saw this reflected in his Virginia Tech teams, was it's spacing, it's making shots, it's being able to play. He didn't really play 5 out at Virginia Tech, but it was true 4 out, 1 in, where for sure. 4 guys could make shots. When he was at A&M, it was not the case, right? There were oftentimes he was playing like 3 guys who were virtually non-shooters.
Yeah, maybe 2 out, 3 in, which you don't see from anybody else. Yeah.
Exactly. But what they were really good at, they were the best in the country at offense rebound rate. They got to the line a ton. They shot a lot of free throws.
And I think Miles Rice especially should be a free throw merchant for this particular team, and I'm looking forward to that piece.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing, their turnover rate was not great. And in his time at Texas A&M, it was never particularly great. But what was good was their non-steal turnover rate. So that means generally what I would say that means is that the turnovers they're having are trying to force like a high leverage pass. It's not a lot of like travels or just like they lose the ball out of bounds because they're very deliberate. It's, and especially because they take longer. I watched a lot of their turnovers from this last year. It's a lot of late clock. I'm going to try and fit this tight window pass in. Yeah. That's a steal. Or I'm really trying hard to create some separation on a move and I just get poked or whatever. But it's not necessarily like, I wouldn't call them a high turnover team, even though the turnover rates were never particularly good. And a lot of that's just Buzz is very deliberate.
Yeah, I
Their
think that's the
offense is
perfect word for it.
It's a very deliberate, controlled offense. He does not play with a lot of continuity. There's not a lot of like side to side, swing the ball and then get into a secondary action. It's we're going to run this high ball screen. We don't love our look off of it. I might throw it to the wing. He might try and get it to a guy in the post. If we don't love that, then we're just going to throw it back and we're going to run another
start all over again.
Yeah. There's not a lot of like side to side stuff, and I think that's a big reason why on basically all of his teams, except for like 2 exceptions from the last 10 years, there's been like one guy who's been the big usage. Well, it was Zurich Phelps this last year. It was Wade Taylor the few years before that. Like I said, there's kind of the occasional exception, but in terms of like his Virginia Tech teams, it was Jerome Robinson, Nikhil Alexander-Walker had a really high usage. There's other guys who get the ball sometimes and get to make decisions, especially a big, lots of times, but usually their offense is built around one guard who gets to do a lot, and that includes taking bad shots. But specifically, what he really wants his guards to do is get downhill and not necessarily create as a passer, but really get fouled. Mm-hmm. He like his guards are high free throw rate guards generally. Jerome Robinson was kind of an exception. He wasn't like a crazy elite free throw rate guy or anything, but overall, his guards get to the line. And like I said, this last year they were really focused on, or these last few years, I should say, really focused on winning the offensive rebound game too. And that gets them to the line a lot in general. And it's kind of weird because you look at his rosters,
they're not huge.
They're not huge. And your automatic assumption would be they would play really fast.
Yeah.
You think of, really like 6'6" Henry Coleman as your starting center. Okay, that's a team that must just be getting out and running, and they're trying to get him transition opportunities. And that's not really the case. I think he prefers to have like a big that can score in the post some. Henry Coleman wasn't great at that, but like he had Julius Marble a couple years ago.
Marble was the one I like comes to mind immediately. Mm-hmm. Like we will literally just throw it into him anytime he's got any kind of matchup advantage.
Yeah. And he had Keenan Blackshear while he was at Virginia Tech, who they love to go through in the post. I'm not sure that this team this year has someone they're going to want to go to a ton in the post. I'd be a little surprised, if they're. Maybe they're going to be trying to get Pharrell Payne going, down low. But
I'd be the only one, and they did that a little bit more in his 2 NCAA tournament games where he looked fairly good. But even still, like I don't think he's got an array of post moves or anything like that. I think
he's not Julius Marble, is what I would say. Yeah,
for sure.
And so what I would expect generally this year is Miles Rice is going to run a lot of pick and roll, and he's going to be getting downhill a lot. I'd expect your wings and forwards to be crashing hard. Your Solomon Washingtons, your Keith Passmores, your Elijah Saunders to be spotting up some. And this team, I think, actually can probably more effectively play like a 4-out, 1-in. Even if none of those
helps, I think, for sure.
None of those 3 guys, I would say, are like elite shooters. And Washington last year was, I think, kind of a bad shooter, if I remember correctly.
Saunders is the best of the bunch for sure, I think.
Yeah, but they can all like. You probably at least kind of have to guard them a little bit, right? Like I do think that is going to allow him to do a little bit more of what he wants to do. The last couple of years, there's been a whole lot of Wade Taylor, Zurich Phelps, like pull-up jumpers. And that's not really what he wants, in my opinion, and when I'm watching. I think he wants downhill drives, and he wants shots at the rim. And he also wants to punish mismatches. That's another thing is when teams try to switch, they will do a lot of, quote-unquote ISO ball. Where they're going to try and have their big buried in the post, or they're going to try and have their guard really pull the ball out and try to beat things that way. And then again, their wings will be used more as like possession guys, spot up shooters. You could see that every once in a while they'll let kind of 2 guys run ball screens. So maybe this year that'll be. Your mileage may vary on what you expect from Guillermo Del Pino, but I could see it being him a little bit. Maybe Isaiah Watts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Coit. If I'm interested to see what his role will look like. Like lots of times, whoever that guy's pure backup is, like whoever the main guy's pure backup is, will get a lot of possessions as a ball handler, decision maker too. But it could also be a secondary guy. They'll sometimes try to do some like step, especially when they're doing, you mentioned the 3-out 2-in. They'll try and do like a ball screen and then one pass into a step up ball screen. So they're getting a backside ball screen and roll usually off of that. And that's just kind of a way to create some motion. And the truth is he's going to have a lot of sets. They would be a hard team to scout for if you were playing, because he will just kind of draw stuff up. He's not like a Danny Hurley or anything where he's like, you're like really, oh man, like this is all
the most
like
advanced stuff you've ever seen. Yeah.
But it's a lot of, this is what I want to create on this possession, so I'm going to draw this play to create this type of shot or this mismatch or this look. And so there's going to be like the occasional like flex screen mixed in, or cross screens to see if they can bait a switch or get something easy on the backside. If they have a shooter, they will run stuff to get that guy's shots. I mean, Jerome Robinson ran off quite a few like wide pin downs into jumpers when he was at Virginia Tech. I could see them doing that with a Watts, right? If he's really making shots, okay, we're just going to run him off some wide pin downs, or they'll do like a pin down away from a ball screen. There's a lot of stuff he's going to do. You can expect a lot of sets, but just don't expect a lot of continuity. It's not going to be, hey, we're playing off of, we're going to move the ball 10 times in a possession and everyone is making a read. It's going to be a lot more like, hey, this one guy can make a read on this possession, or these two guys can make a read, and this is the play we're going to run, which is, I would say, fairly different from, I'm blanking on his name, the coach that just left for Villanova. Willard. It's fairly different from what he was doing, which was a little bit more kind of free flowing, right? A little bit more, we have 4 guys on the floor we might be letting make decisions. And then Julian Reese just standing, kind of down in the dunker spot. And so there is going to be a different feel to this offense. It's going to be very, very guard heavy. Willard's team was guard heavy, obviously, but this will be even more extreme. I mean, the best players on basically all of Buzz Williams' teams over the last decade has been like a 6'4" or smaller guy, or at least the most important offensive player. And that is, even though he likes to play through the post some, that does say that those are the guys he's going to empower. That's what he recruits to. I think it's pretty clear that's what he believes Miles Rice can be. And so, a lot of Maryland seasons are going to live and die based on how well that guard can do.
When I was thinking about the Miles Rice pickup, I was like, all right, he's going to be good in pick and roll, but also would be better if he had some actual floor spacers. But Buzz doesn't really seem all that concerned with spreading the floor out all that much. Like, they're just going to kind of run what they want to run and figure out that they can create space in different parts by kind of using the middle part of the floor, or going up over guys at the rim. And it's just not a very, and I would say it's less conventional these days than that. Like, you talked about a lot of ball screens and not continuity. So like, for folks that are wondering, like, what do we mean by continuity when we talk about ball screens? Think of like what Gonzaga does. Like, they're a heavy continuity. Anybody could initiate a ball screen here essentially, and we'll kind of run certain things to death and things like that. So it's not going to look like that. It's you use deliberate. I think that's a great word for it. I think methodical is another kind of word here with Buzz.
It's a lot closer to, if we're going to stay WCC, it's a lot closer to St. Mary's.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a very good sort of offensive comp for them. Is just, we're going to get into shot clocks. You mentioned the free throw rate too. They were consistently at the top of the ACC, or the SEC, in that top 3 or 4 every year, I want to say, maybe with an exception here or there, in terms of fouls that they draw. So again, drawing a lot of fouls, getting some guards going to the rim, and then just letting your bigs crash, I think is an interesting way to play in today's college basketball. And you mentioned being hard to scout. I think that might actually give them a little bit of a leg up, being the new kid on the block, coming into the league. There are a lot of teams in the Big Ten that I think play pretty similarly, so it'll be easier for them to scout the rest of the league as opposed to the rest of the league scout them. So I think they might actually get off to a pretty good start in Big Ten play here because people are just going to be like, "What is this dude doing?" Like it's just not the way the rest of these guys are going to try to play.
This is a strong zag from what I would generally call Big Ten ball. You think of the map painter, looking back a little farther, the John Beeline, and kind of like the same sameness that it feels like we get a lot out of the Big Ten, where it's like, this is clearly like a really good conference, but also like a lot of these coaches kind of run the same things. They seem to have a very similar philosophy in terms of pace. Like this is very different. This is a very different type of team. And I think you can already, for me, a part of me wondered if Buzz would adapt a little bit more, kind of how he did, to the SEC. He gets a little bit more athletic, a little bit less skilled, a little bit more winning on possession. When he was in the ACC, he was a little bit more skilled, a little bit more about playing the modern game, quote unquote. I kind of thought that he might pivot a little bit into playing a little bit more big ball and trying to get maybe some bruisers and some skilled offensive wings and forwards, which is what a lot of Big Ten teams do. And he didn't. We'll see if it works, but I think he's going to try and play his game the way he wants to, at least at first. I think he's a great adapter in general. I think something you see with him, and this is just kind of looking through, historically, is that I think he generally has a good idea of what he wants to do with a program during that first year, and it just like hones and hones and hones. Again, it's notable just how different his Texas A&M offenses were from his Virginia Tech offenses in terms of what they were good at. But it's notable to me that like it seems like he recognized what his teams were going to be good at early, and they just got better every year.
Refined it.
Yeah. The offensive rebound rate in Texas A&M got better every year until it literally couldn't get better anymore because they were the first best offensive rebounding team 2 years in a row. The free throw rate got better basically every year. 1 year took a slight step back. Versus like you go to Virginia Tech, the effective field goal rate, that's what went up every year, right? They were just a really efficient offense. And you can kind of see that like, I'm guessing there's going to be some trial and error this year. I don't know. I would not expect this to be a team that's really like competing for a Sweet 16 this year. Obviously, a lot can happen, but that would just be my expectation. Is that this is a team that's kind of feeling out a little bit of what the Big Ten is. I think this is a team that could get some big wins if you get like great games from Miles Rice or maybe Rakeith Passmore kind of blows past some of the expectations I would personally have for him because he's very talented and he can do that. And this is an older team, right? There's a lot of juniors and seniors, but every team in college basketball is kind of older now. So
especially Power 5 guys.
So I that would kind of be where I think this is a solid offense, but I would not expect this to be like a top like 50 offense yet. Probably. I think it'll probably take a little bit of time. It's probably going to be a top 100 offense, which is better than his first year at either of the last couple schools. But I do think it might take some time for it to really hone into exactly what it's going to look like at its best. But I do think you see some of the building blocks here. This is a team that is going to offensive rebound, that is going to have guards that are going to play, heavy usage roles as downhill drivers. And this is a team that's going to run a lot of ball screen stuff. You like the couple bigs that are on the roster are a lot more like roll and dunk bigs than they are necessarily post up bigs. I actually could see this team using like Elijah Saunders, like some in the post, like kind of seeing if, because I think they might have a big two, maybe seeing where they can get a mismatch with a wing and using that guy down low. That's not something he's done in a while, but he's done it before. And I could see him kind of going back to that. I think of like when he had Emmanuel Miller, he would post him up some, even though he wasn't a 5, just because he kind of gets some mismatches there. I'm interested to see how that kind of plays itself out. But this is a kind of what I would expect the roster build to look like in terms of what they want to do offensively.
my expectation from not really paying a ton of attention to them was just it's 2 freelance guards and 3 bigs out there just waiting to rebound stuff that like guys play playground ball on the perimeter and then chuck it up. But it's not that. Like it is very execution focused, I think, here. Your guards aren't really gonna freelance all that much. Like you said, maybe your one high usage guy gets a little more license to do his thing, and you talked about the evolution from Virginia Tech to Texas A&M. I'm wondering what the slight deviation or wrinkle maybe here at Maryland. I do think this will be a better shooting team. He's routinely referenced how good David Coit has been, but you also keep hearing a lot about how they believe in Elijah Saunders as a shooter. So maybe you see a little more pick and pop with him involved in a pick and roll. They didn't really do all that much of that where any of the bigs actually stepped out in Texas A&M from what I saw. So he could be a guy that maybe they do some of this a little differently here. But again, focus on not a ton of spreading out for threes, but they'll take a decent amount of them. We'll see a lot of drives, few post ups. But any of these wings, I feel like if they cut, they're gonna have opportunities to get the ball, and it's not like I don't know. It's equal opportunity from the sense that like you could have 10 guys on this team that average 6 points, where it's like any of them, if they're in the right spot, can do this. But Bryce, I just keep looking at this roster, and you were touching on it earlier. Like this seems built to play fast, and he just does not seem to want to do that. And we already talked about the pace here, but I don't know. Do you think that's a wrinkle that they could employ here moving over to the Big Ten, is just trying to get out a little bit more in transition?
I think I'd be a little surprised. I think that's the type of thing that I think Buzz Williams is an adaptable coach in that he will adapt his sets, and he'll specifically adapt parts of his defense to potentially match his personnel. But I think he has a core philosophy, and that's that he and this is not I don't want to be like an armchair psychologist, but I talk to a lot of coaches all the time, right? Like that's kind of my job now. And I think he's someone who thinks he knows best all the time, which is probably not a wrong decision, right? Like he probably does know better than his players a lot of the time, and he wants the decision in his hand. It's like you even mentioned, like the guards do get a freelance, right? Like Wade Taylor kind of in terms of the shots they could take, but they don't get a freelance in that they will run the ball screen at the part of the floor they're told to run the ball screen. So even if they're freelancing, they're still freelancing in this little box.
The leash is short, but there is a leash.
Yeah. It's like it's kind of like you're teaching kids to color, and they're learning to color all the way within the line, but maybe they might color something that's supposed to be green red just to piss you off a little bit, right? Like I think there's kind of that to be said with it, where it's Miles Rice, you're going to be very frustrated because he's going to have some really bad turnovers, and he'll probably take some floaters and pull up mid-range shots that just make you scratch your head, but he'll continue to play and continue to get that leash if he is doing the requisite amount of playmaking and he is running stuff where and when he is told to run stuff. You see a lot of more than you will see, I would imagine, with basically any other Big Ten team, a lot of the point guard or one of the wings holding the ball and kind of like turning their back to the basket in a very clear, we are not running offense right now. I'm going to turn towards the basket. And now we're running offense. Like there is a lot of that kind of segmentation in terms of the way in which decision making is allowed. So you'll see a lot of, and this is, I hope this doesn't sound too repetitive, but I imagine you'll see a lot of ball screen. We don't quite get what we want. The ball swings out, and then instead of it, again, instead of that wing, if he doesn't have a quick drive or a shot, it's going to go back out, and it's not like our point guard is going to catch and immediately have a ball screen. He will catch and he will breathe and he will call up his big
dribble back out to half court, circle around,
or he might realize he likes his matchup and he wants to create one-on-one. He might see that there's a post guy and hold the guy in the post, whatever it might be. There's different things, but it's all going to be very under control. I'd be pretty surprised, except when they get turnovers, which they have never. He has. Last year he forced a good amount of turnovers. And even his last year at Texas A&M, or at Virginia Tech, excuse me, they forced a good amount of turnovers, right? When they force turnovers, they'll get out and run.
Yep.
But if there's no turnover, there's no transition layup, then I wouldn't expect them to play fast.
Yep.
Now this team, I think, could force more turnovers than a lot of Big Ten teams. I'd have to check this, but I think this is most of his years at Texas Tech, he forced more or Texas A&M, excuse me, he forced more turnovers than any Big Ten team. But I'd have to kind of
felt that way watching them play. Like that was a real point of emphasis for them, was to just kind of cause disruption throughout, what the other team was trying to
do. Not to transition too much to defense, but they do it in a different way than like again. It's kind of interesting. You look at the roster, and I told you this is a team that forces a lot of turnovers. I think you might expect one thing, and it's not that. It's not like trapping on the ball and flying around off of it. It's not these crazy hard hedges. It's not like a full court press like Mississippi State. It's that they're just crazy hard in gaps. They're constantly sitting in gaps. They dig really hard on drives. They will dig really hard on the post. They will double the post quite a bit.
Which is also kind of methodical on the other end of the ball, too. It seems like very coaching heavy of like, we have a certain way we want you to play defense. And those are the guys that are going to get on the floor if they're playing that way.
So it's sort of an evolution of pack line stuff, right? In terms of being in those gaps and being hard and help across the middle of the key. I think a lot of what Buzz does, and this is including the fact that he doesn't really recruit a lot of crazy good shooters, is I think a lot of his thought process is college basketball players are not smart enough to make these adjustments in real time, which is a strategy, I know a lot of coaches use, right? Like, hey, the reason I'm not going to play a lot of shooters is because these guys are going to be so rote in how they close out and so rote in what their help responsibility is or isn't, that they're not going to adjust to the fact that this isn't actually a shooter. They're still going to close out the same way. They're still going to, not be in help if it's not their help. They're still going to be in help when it is their help. So it doesn't matter anyways. We're going to get away with having these worst shooters. And really the only difference is, instead of that kick out being to a 36% shooters to a 29% shooter, it's like 1.5 points per game. But it doesn't actually change any geometry on the floor. And I think defensively, it's the same way. It's, hey, we're going to try and force the same turnover 4 times. They're going to try and throw it to the post 4 times, and we're going to get that same backside sprinting the baseline steal on the double every time. And they're not smart enough to adjust. The coach will have to pull his hair out and call a timeout and sit them down and tell them you can't do this first. And that's a strategy that can be successful. I think when it runs up against the highest level teams, I think it's a problem.
Teams execute really well against them. They can get blown off the floor pretty
quickly.
I
could see a world, right, where like this team plays at Purdue this year and this is like by 50 points or something, where it's just like that stuff just doesn't work, and Braden Smith is just too good, and Oscar Clough and Trey Kaufman-Wren are just too big and dominating inside or whatever.
What like Smith did, just sort of like personally picking apart, like what Houston was trying to do to him last year and pick him up full court and use length and athleticism. Like he's the kind of right surgical guy to go through that. But we'll go fully into defense here in a second. Just last thing on the offense, I think Maryland fans, be ready for our new best friend, the shot clock. We're going to see a lot of single digits on the shot clock here. That does result, I think, in some of those turnovers that Bryce mentioned of just, hey, we're going to pull it back out and start all over again if we need to. And, it's already late in the shot clock to try to do this. But that's okay. Again, it's hard for college kids to want to guard somebody for a full 30-second shot clock too. And I do think that plays in their advantage more times than it doesn't. So we'll see. All right. So let's go fully into the defense here a little bit. You mentioned there's some pack line-ish kind of stuff. I was trying to like put a label on what they're doing here, and I really couldn't do it, Bryce. Like it's hard to compare it to other teams. It felt just sort of different and nuanced enough to me. Like there's some clear things that you see here. Like it seems like they want to force teams into taking a lot of threes. That was a sort of a common theme at Texas A&M. They forced more 3-point attempts in 2019-2020 than any team in the SEC. And at Virginia Tech, the squad was second in college basketball history at the time for forcing threes, which is crazy. And I think we're going to see a lot of that here. So like Bryce was saying, it's going to be some robotic, principled defensive things here where we're forcing guys to take tough threes from, honestly, some of them are from the corners where there aren't a lot of room for guys to operate or break people down. But I saw some no middle stuff here, I feel like, but I wouldn't call it like this sort of true no middle Chris Beard, Mark Adams kind of defense here. I don't know. So how would you describe this defense? Like, give us the elevator version of it. Is there a label you'd put on it or a term?
Yeah, I probably would call it like a modern pack line. Like that's
Okay.
probably what my description of it would be. It doesn't follow all the traditional pack line rules,
So
but I think
what does that mean for somebody that's like, what is a pack line?
yeah. So pack line in the traditional sense was a Dick Bennett
Mhm.
creation, something we saw at WSU for a long time, to the extent that that was what my dad loved, and that's what he coached me to do. So I was very used to the pack line, and basically what that means is that a lot of teams will play defense where there's no help one pass away. Pack line is you will generally stay inside the 3-point line, at least your help defenders will, and you will help one pass away. You're in what is called the gap, and so that's one pass away, and then two passes away you will be in help. So you have your gap, or it can be called pack. Lots of times, right? You'll say I'm in pack. I'm pack right, pack left, whatever, and then I'm in help, where you're generally over what is called the middle of the court. So like, let's say the ball is on the right hand side of the court and your guy is in the left corner, you will get all the way generally to the right block. It can change based on who it is. So like last year, Henry Coleman was getting even farther over at times, and they were just going to scramble out of the back of it. And so it can almost look like a zone
I was just
sometimes.
gonna ask you that. This is a man-to-man defense with maybe a little hybrid. There's
There,
almost some
there, there's
zone-ish
some zone,
principles to it. Yeah,
especially because they generally want to switch 1 through 4, or at least
yeah,
2 through 4.
yeah.
They will sometimes let their one fight through. Just depends if there's matchups they're trying to avoid. And I think a lot of the ancillary stuff you mentioned, like no middle, if they are going to fight through ball screens versus hard hedge ball screens versus drop ball screens, like they will mix all that type of stuff up. I think that's all just personnel. It's who
Hmm.
are they playing? What do they want to accomplish in that game?
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. So when they're playing Michigan in the NCAA tournament last year, they were like with Henry Coleman, they were in like this soft catch on ball screens
Hmm.
with letting the point guard navigate. He would sometimes go over, sometimes go under based on where the screen was being set and who was running the ball screen. Trey Donaldson, they were generally going under, and certain other guys they might go over. And then there's always a hard tag on that. But there were also games where they would just switch everybody. Even Henry Coleman at times would be switching ball screens, and they would just tag out of it as the ball swung away. So it's really based on communication. It's based a lot on kind of true shell principles. I'm going to guess if you see footage of their practices, you're going to see a lot of 5 people standing around the perimeter and the ball being passed around and then loudly talking as they're sprinting spot to spot, closing out. And then you mentioned they're not a hard closeout team. They're not a prevent threes, even from good shooters. Like a part of me wonders, like, had this Texas A&M team played like the Sasha Stefanovic Purdue team,
Hmm.
like would he have just got like 15 threes off in that game? Like
Yeah.
I kind of don't know, because even good shooters, they are lots of times closing out short. Like their defense is built on, we want to give up no advantages downhill. We would rather them take a million wide open catch and shoot threes one
Hmm.
pass away than get any advantage downhill. And then by extension on that, they want to turn the opponent over. And that is by being in gaps. That's by having hard digs. That's by being able to like really steal interior passes. And they were really, really good at that. By the end, they had, I mean, really, I thought perfected that. They were great in gaps, and they were a great rebounding team too, despite being super small, because they're just packing the paint. It's really hard for drivers to feel like they can breathe, and it was really effective overall last year. I mean, they were the they were the 10th best defense in the country last year, playing this kind of weird, fairly old school feeling style.
Yeah, I think we mentioned they're not afraid to let teams shoot a lot of threes, but I think you nailed it with it's not going to be drive and kick threes, because they're going to prevent that drive as much as they can. If someone wants to take a straight up, head on three, cool. But it's not going to be because somebody penetrated in the teeth of defense and kicked it out to a wide open shooter. Like, that would be something that would make Buzz want to rip, his remaining hair out at this point. Like, that seems very much what they want to do. They're okay letting you take jump shots. They want to at least somewhat contest you in those jump shots when they can. But I don't know, like, help and recover, I think, is a good way to think about it for a lot of what people want to do. Like,
and a lot of help the helper stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, they will fly around, and that's part of, like, Anderson Garcia was a big part of these teams despite his issues offensively, because he was just willing and able to recognize what was going on offensively and fly around and make up for, I don't even want to say the mistakes of his teammates, but just in this defense, you will be caught in rotation. And if you have these big, long 6'7" guys that are willing to just play hard and sprint around, like, they will really help you cover those up. That's why they can get away with playing a Henry Coleman as the rim protector, because people aren't even getting into the paint anyways.
Exactly it.
The other thing they do is they force a lot of long twos, a lot of pull-up jump shots or floaters from the free throw line or whatever.
We'll allow you to get to 17 feet in and shoot basically anything. Anything else from there, though, we're going to, like, jump all
and then they're going to rebound it. They were a very math-based team in that they just won the possession game all the time. They got more rebounds, and they forced more turnovers, and they turned the ball over in a lot of their games. And it led to big success despite them not being a particularly efficient offensive team. And even with them allowing so many threes, because even if the other team, makes 10 more threes in a game than them, if you're getting, 25 more possessions and the other team is also shooting 30% from two, you still have a really good shot to win the game. So that was kind of their math on it. And again, not to focus too hard on the roster necessarily, but I would imagine that they're going to play a very similar way with these, long, strong forwards that are going to rotate around and, help guys out and do all that stuff. Like, that's all important stuff that I imagine will fit with what Buzz wants to do.
You mentioned, like, an Anderson Garcia on past teams. Like, that's going to be Solomon Washington on steroids with this group. He was already very good defensively last year, but I think he's going to be the guy that's going to clean up a lot of these things for other people. And why Buzz seems to want to prioritize these 6'5" to 6'8" super athletic long guys that can actually cover that ground to do the help the helper kind of stuff that we were talking about here. I had a friend ask me, like, they're not really a big team, so what are they going to do when they play somebody like Michigan that's got, just three huge dudes on it? I'm not as worried about that kind of matchup. It's more like you talked about with this, like, execution-heavy Purdue team that's really, going to put them in rotation the whole time.
The thing they'll really struggle with is teams that don't turn the ball over. I even worry less about teams that shoot, because generally, like, those teams are probably going to just shoot anyways. Like 3-point defense is a really hard thing to quantify unless you're just completely taking them away. And so, if you're going to play a great shooting team, the hope is that this is going to be, if you can force them to turn the ball over, it'll even that out. But yeah, like a really low turnover Purdue team. I think there were a couple other I'd have to check. There are a couple other Big Ten teams that are just, like, really low turnover. But I think, and we saw it a little bit, right? I think this Maryland team is going to be, comparable to that Texas A&M team last year. Like, play a team like Michigan. Like, Michigan just turns the ball over so much that you're going to have a chance, even if you're less talented, because you're just going to punish them for their whether you want to call it hubris or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the really high level execution teams or teams that are able to play, one guy that can have like a 45% usage rate. That's who you'll really struggle with,
I'm a
because if
little
that
bit
one
worried
guy can
about.
pick them up.
I'm a little worried about this team playing Iowa, where it's like very methodical, similarly from Ben McCollum, and a high usage guy like Bennett Sturts. That's not a crazy high turnover guy, that's going to try to pick them apart. So we'll see what that ultimately looks like for them. But it's just, there are a couple teams in this Big Ten that are, I think going to just be tough matchups for overall. So I don't know. Bryce, did we ever see any actuals just zone from them? Like I typically like a coach that's willing to just throw a totally new wrinkle at a team. I don't remember seeing just like, here is a true 2-3 zone or anything like kind of straightforward like that.
Yeah, I mean, not like a ton. As I pull it up, they played 255 total possessions of zone last year. At least a couple of those are just synergy is going to mischaracterize some of their man defense and zone defense, especially in transition.
Mm-hmm.
But if they are, it's going to be like a type of like 3-2 where they're going to extend their guy in the middle. I would imagine that's what they would do occasionally last year, but I would not expect this to be a big zone team. The mainly because I think they were fairly bad rebounding out of zone in the little bit that I watched. And I just think like that's one of those things that's just like unacceptable for Buzz, right? Like he can't play a team that's going to be a bad rebounding team. And again, you could let like they're going to be one of the smaller teams in the Big Ten, if not the smallest team in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Zone is going to be even more hurtful for a team like that being able to rebound than it would be, if you had a 7-1 guy, you were standing in the center of it, like the Mike Hopkins UW team.
Can funnel everybody to your one big guy is different than, all right, couple other things here, and we'll move on from just straight up the defense here. I think one, like, the switching is one thing I want to talk a little bit more about, and there's a listener question to that, so maybe we'll hold that for a bit here. But for one of the bigs, so the backup big for this team is most likely Colin Metcalf, coming in from Northeastern, that was a good shot blocker here. So are we going to see some more maybe conventional or traditional college basketball coverages that you see with like a true 5 out there? Like, will they hard hedge ball screens with him, or they true drop? Like, what do you expect to see if they go a little bigger, maybe?
I imagine it'll be either a hard hedge or what I call a soft catch, or what some might call a soft hedge. Okay. Or excuse me, a high catch is generally what I call it. So the high catch is your big is at the level of the screen defensively, but he's kind of dropping from there. And his goal isn't to prevent like a pocket pass or a lob over the top, because you have hard tagging help. Their goal is just to kind of be at the level and show and not get beat by the guard going downhill, allow their guard to recover. Hopefully what they always want to force is a pass back out to one of the wings that we can close out to and shut down from there. Or a hard hedge. I don't think he loves to hard hedge because it complicates his help, and they're more in rotation. I think what he likes about the soft catch is it's just kind of like their natural guarding almost, where it's like this guy, it's just treating like the big is in the gap and the guy 2 passes away is in help. Because help is oftentimes in pack line, like it's about cutters anyway. So if you're treating a roller like a cutter and you're treating the driving guard like you would, you're just in a gap. It doesn't really change any of your principles. If you hard hedge, it does. You have to be able to bring that guy farther over.
You're fully committing at that point, right? Like it's harder to help off that.
So he tends to save that for when he really wants to get the ball out of someone's hands. Like I could see them hard hedging Braden Smith. Now I could also see them being like, actually, let's just let Braden Smith just, please God, just take tons of pull-up twos. Like that's all we want from you. Like, I mean, he's a matchup nightmare in general, right? He might win Player of the Year this year. So I know his name's come up a couple times. I don't want to spend too much time on him, but I would imagine it'll be a lot of soft catch, except for teams where they want the ball out of someone's hands and they don't really trust the other guys as decision makers. Like there's been some Northwestern teams in the past where it's like, okay, one guy can really make decisions, and if anyone else is put in that situation, it's going to be really rough. So let's hard hedge to get the ball out of that guy's hands and see if we can really rush someone else, because we are going to be in rotation. So they're going to think we should punish it by going quickly, which generally, if you're a defense that's hard hedging, that's what you want. You want the wings to think, oh man, I need to go really fast right now. And so I
get some of those turnovers and stuff too. And
yeah, I could see them doing that. I could also see them doing some pre-switch stuff where they're going to, have the big guard, whoever's in the opposite corner, and they're just going to say you're going to stay low. Even so, like let's say your guy's dunker spot, well, you're guarding him, but as he goes up, you're no longer guarding him. You're going to guard his opposite corner, and we're going to switch around you so that you can stay low and be in help. They don't have any like true big like that who's like super slow footed, but they would do that with Marble a couple of years ago, where they were really focused on trying to keep him around the paint as much as possible. So they can mix it up and do some different things. But I imagine most of what you'll see if they're doing traditional ball screen coverage is that soft catch.
I like that. The other piece of this too, I think, is just trying to avoid fouling guys. We talked about they like to, get to the foul line as much as they can. And I think this is the opposite on the defensive side. They want to do that, and they don't want other teams to do that on them. We talked about how they're guarding and it being kind of deliberate or methodical on that end too. So you're going to see, them contesting, but not like, totally selling out and flying at guys where they might, pick up a bunch of like stupid fouls. Like, not that they'll never foul or anything like that, but I think overall that was sort of my impression of, wow, like these guys are doing a good job of making these guys take tough shots without, doing crazy shots, doing crazy shit to have to, force them to do it. So I think that's good for Buzz. And
I actually think Buzz was really frustrated by how much they did foul last year.
Yeah,
I think in general, I agree with you. He wants to be really low foul to the extent that he will have his bigs Olay to block shots and try and speed guys up rather than try to go vertical. There's a fairly strong debate over which more effective. People believe differently, but they do a lot of Olay contests where they're twisting and letting the guy get the angle, because their hope is that either they can actually pin it without fouling, or if they can't, that guy's going to be sped up anyways. Versus if you go vertical, even if you do it perfectly, there's still like a 10% chance that the ref's just going to make the wrong call because there's body-to-body contact anyways. So he wants to really not foul. They would foul a lot, like weirdly on reaches last year and stuff. You could see him get really frustrated with that.
Especially Zurich Phelps, man. Not a Zurich Phelps guy here.
Yeah.
But I think that's big for this team. I think that's been a question for Maryland fans is they seem like a group that's going to have to rely a lot on Pharrell Payne, who didn't play a ton of minutes last year overall. So the best way for him to not pick up a ton of dumb fouls is to do exactly what you're talking about here. So I think that's the way they can get him up to, 27, 28 minutes a game or something like that. And then I think that's when they're going to be at their best.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. And, I think they're going to really need him offensively because, last year, sneakily really efficient, overall player, like especially as a putback guy, really good putback guy. I think him and Miles Rice could be like a really sneaky dynamic duo, because something that Miles was good at in his time at WSU, I didn't watch enough of his time at Indiana, but was like understanding when he could get a pass off versus when he was better to just go lay it up, even if he didn't feel like he had a great angle or touch on it, because he had bigs that could just grab the offensive rebound. That WSU team was a great offensive rebounding team that played two bigs a lot. And
was Chinyelu on the team with him?
Chinyelu was, yeah. So was Clough, who's going to be in the Big Ten this year, and Isaac Jones, who is like kind of in the NBA. So I love Isaac, but so that was a team where he would do that a lot, where he would get downhill or even kind of into like the mid-range area, and he'd say, I don't really have a pass, but if I shoot or I go for a layup, like they might take half a step and then my guy will get inside leverage and have a 50% shot on offensive rebound. And it would hurt his personal efficiency, but the team would score. And he was very good at that type of stuff. And like those little things aren't going to matter. I could see him a lot of times. He's throwing up layups that you're like, oh, it hit off the backboard, hit nothing else. And then Pharrell Payne crashes it for a dunk. And you're like, oh, I guess that kind of makes sense. Like
it's almost like an oop off the backboard, you know, but if I make it, great. If not, you got my back here. And I all these guys have talked about, like Buzz brought them in and showed them specific film of how they would fit in with what he wants to do. And I would imagine that's exactly what they were trying to show Miles Rice. Hey, you did this at Washington State. That's going to happen a lot here too. And I think that's probably why that commitment happened so quick. All right, let's transition to some listener questions here, brought to you by Ratsy's Pizza as a throwback here. Just kidding, R.I.P. Ratsy's. First question for Max Met: how often will we switch all five on defense? I would say almost never would be my guess, unless there's some weird lineup.
With this group, very rarely. I mean, maybe if they're going to have some lineups where they play like Washington or Saunders at the 5. Yeah. But even then, I actually think this is a team that's not going to want to switch Saunders much. Sorry about my dog. That's not going to want to switch Saunders much onto the perimeter. I think they're not going to want him guarding guards a ton because I think they're going to want him and Washington in rotation as much as possible. Yeah. You know, especially with them, it's seeming like they're not going to play a second small guard. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of 1 through 5. I think there's a chance that you don't even see a lot of Miles Rice switching at all. I think it could be a lot of him having to get through screens, and those 3 wings will switch things, but not Miles and not whoever the 5 is.
Gotcha. I like that. That makes a lot of sense, and it'll be really interesting. He's talked a lot about David Coit in the offseason here. I love David Coit. He hypes up David Coit every time he can mention, but I do think that will complicate things for them defensively to start those, like he and Rice together in the backcourt. Because,
would you say, not to interrupt the listener questions, but would you say that's the expectation right now?
It's hard to tell who that'll be. It seems like Buzz is a very deliberate guy. So if he's mentioning Coit this much, and we have not heard much mention of Watts from him, like my original thought was have the old Washington State backcourt of Rice and Watts start these games, and then have Washington, Saunders, and Payne. But every time it's who's looked really good or who's leading the team, you hear about Coit a lot. So I think that would just disrupt too much of what they want to do defensively. So also the other thing with Buzz is, we've talked about this on the show a bunch, but who he starts isn't necessarily who's going to play the bulk of those minutes too. So maybe they start them together and quickly move away from it, or
the thing I would say too is I would not expect like winning a Big Ten championship or anything to be Buzz's primary concern this season. If Coit is the 7th best player, but the guy that's going to be willing to do all the stuff right, who's talented enough, he might play more than maybe some fans think he should, at least early in the year, to set a tone a little bit. Right now, again, this team doesn't have as many young guys as like his first Texas A&M team or his first Virginia Tech team, but there are some like talented young players here, right? That
Rice could be back next year. Passmore, Andre Mills, Turkson, all these other guys are. It's less the front court; it's more the wings and the guards that you could conceivably see back next year.
And I think that has a lot to do with, hey, maybe Coit is just gonna, he's gonna do all these things right, and he's gonna also help us set up what our offense is gonna be. Which I do think, when push comes to shove, I would say Buzz Williams is more of an offensive coach than a defensive coach. That might be a hot take, but just in terms of what I think he tends to prioritize in terms of his schemes and his sets, I think it leans slightly offense, even though, again, he's been a great defensive coach at times too. Like he's a really good two-way coach where he's had a lot of good teams on both ends. But I do think there's that slight slant towards the offense in terms of how they are so deliberate on that end, and they're so under control. So I think Coit could play a lot, even with the potential issues it might cause defensively, just because he wants to set that tone on offense.
No, I think that's a good point. And there were definitely times I watched Texas A&M play, and I'm like, why are the guys that aren't very good playing a bunch of minutes together? And I think it's exactly what you talked about, where they were probably doing all the little things, and he was willing to sit some guys down in the process here. All right, so next listener question comes from Wheaton Terp. Buzz seems to be recruiting a lot of guards compared to bigs. Has he played many 3-guard or even 4-guard lineups successfully? I don't remember seeing a ton of that. It's more 1 guard, 3 or 4 wings than it is, than like just true like smalls on the court together. I think it was even putting Zurich Phelps and Wade Taylor together a bunch last year was even a little bit of a departure of they went smaller than they had at times.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, if you go back some to his Virginia Tech teams, there's some more 3-guard stuff, depending which, what do you call Nikhil Alexander Walker really? He was 6'5", but, in general, okay, they would play a lot of guys that were 6'5" and skinny or smaller, right? Like they're, but I would not say that he's a 3-guard guy. I think I honestly think sometimes teams get Texas A&M confused with Mississippi State just because they kind of look similar.
All the little small guys like Josh Hubbard out there just heaving stuff.
Mississippi State would play super small, right? I even think back to I think this was before Jans, but Iverson Molinar was playing with like 2 other small guards. Like it's just kind of like a thing down there, but not necessarily him. He likes wings. He's not really a big guy. He likes his guard, his single guard, right. But then otherwise he likes even Zurich Phelps. I think he viewed in some ways as a wing. Who he realized needed the ball a lot. But in terms of what they did, like what Zurich did defensively, he was more of a wing. And so I do think there is some of that with him, where he likes his rangy, long, athletic wings. Going back to as long as he's been coaching, like there's been, he's always playing long wings who can either make plays or contribute, as a rebounder or whatever going, this is a guy that coached in the same year Jimmy Butler, Jay Crowder, and Dwight Bucks. He has consistently been a wings guy in terms of what he recruits and what he values. Even if his guards get a lot of the decision-making bend. So that would be my expectation, is that he just continues to bring in these athletic wings. And I think in time, you're going to see him start to bring in NBA caliber ones. You're going to see some real NBA wings coming through Maryland here in a way he couldn't quite get through Texas A&M. He had a lot of like I still think Garcia was like a fringe prospect his whole time. He just never quite developed the shot. But I think in the next couple of years, we're going to see him hit on like a real guy on the wing who can really do his things athletically, but is going to be more offensively talented than some of the guys on the team right now.
I think this is why he's so locked in on a recruit like a Junior County that's 6'5", really a 2, but he can play some on the 3, play a little with the 1, do a little bit of everything, and maybe has some NBA upside too. T. James 53 said, I love small ball. To me, it's more open and free-flowing. To this day, my favorite team is still the Flying Illinois team with Gil, Nick Anderson, and Kenny Battle. I love how they pressed with their defense and clogged the middle with slow, plodding big men. I don't expect this team to play a ton of like true small ball like we talked about with the guards, but I could see a Miles Rice, Andre Mills, Solomon Washington, George Turkson, I don't know, Elijah Saunders at the 5 kind of lineup where it's just a bunch of, switchable guys, even 1 through 5 if you wanted to, although I don't, like we said, I don't think we'll see a ton of that. But small ball.
And free flowing is definitely not the right term either. Honestly, like if I was to like give you guys like a popular team from the last decade or so to like compare this team to, it's a different offense, but it's similar in terms of its pace. It's like the 2019 Virginia team, and just how like everything was set up and everything was, kind of about this action. For that Virginia team, it was the movers and blocker stuff. For this team, it'll be high ball screen But everything will kind of be built around that and play off of that. And it's going to be very deliberate and very focused on, giving one or two guys the decision making, while Coach Buzz gets to diagnose what's going on and drop or call the right thing to beat what the defense is specifically showing in that game or that moment.
Yeah, I think that is a good comp, which may just have made some people's heads explode from like what we're gonna have to potentially suffer through on certain nights when it's not looking good. But you saw that with Virginia when they got NBA caliber guards in there to play some of that system. That's when they, really at their best. And like you talked about with maybe for Buzz in year 2, 3, 4 here at Maryland, maybe Darius Adams, guys like that start to pop. That's when I think this team can really take off.
Mm-hmm.
Winterp says, can we beat Purdue and other big teams with 3 or 4 7-footers in regular rotation by shooting 38% from 3? I would be shocked if there are more than a few performances this year where this team as a whole shoots 38% from 3, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of I think beating Purdue is going to be a tough ask for anyone in the Big Ten this year. Just to be honest, I think it might be a tough ask for anyone in the sport of college basketball.
Yeah.
I would expect this team to do well against the majority of the Big Ten, at least be competitive. Michigan State is not going to be like crazy gigantic, right? Or like a crazy difficult matchup. The tough teams to match up with are going to be the teams that have really good decision makers, up and down the lineup, and or at least one really, really high level decision maker. Could an Illinois be tough for this team? Probably not, because they're probably just going to turn Illinois over a ton. But maybe like a UCLA who's going to also be willing to play deliberately and isn't like a crazy high mistake team. Like maybe that could be a tough team for this Maryland team. I expect Maryland to be really competitive. I think this could probably even be a tournament team in year 1 for Buzz Williams. But I do think there's going to be a lot of close, frustrating losses and the occasional, we really got blown up by this team that we just couldn't turn over at all. That would be kind of my expectation.
Yeah, where we shot particularly poorly and didn't get a lot of offensive rebounds, and they shot super well. Things could get dark pretty quick.
For what it's worth, though, he did mention like size, and I know you said this earlier, but like my worry with matching up with Purdue is not just that they're big. Because the truth is, lots of times those big, slow guys like have a hard time blocking out guys like Elijah Saunders or Solomon Washington or whatever. Anyways, like they're just slinky and they're going to attack from the perimeter in. I actually think something that's going to help is that they might be playing 3 smaller perimeter guys. That's going to boost your offensive rebounding just as much as having a Clough and Copeland in there to control the defensive rebounds. But the trouble is going to be if a team gets really hot from 3, right? There's just nothing this team can do. Like they don't really even have adjustments to take away every shooter. They might stick like. You could see Isaiah Watts maybe playing more in a game if a team has like one shooter that's really hot, and then we're just going to say, hey, you're just going to stick with him through screens. You're going to fight over the top of everything. Just make sure he doesn't shoot. But they don't have a lot of adjustments for teams that have 3 guys that are all making shots. There's just at a certain point they're going to make those shots.
They're just willing to live with that in the rare instance that it happens. I think. He also asked what this team's 3-point percentage target for conference play will be. I think Texas A&M was right around 30% for the year as a 3-point shooting team. If this Maryland team is like 33% on the year, like I would take that, honestly, just looking at this group that they've got.
Matt, what do you think the best season of Buzz Williams' Texas A&M career was in terms of the 3-point shooting?
Like 31.5 or something like that.
You're a little 32.6.
Okay.
His best year at Virginia Tech, they shot 40.3%. This is not going to be like that. I would imagine this is around a 32, 33% shooting team. That would be my expectation. A lot of it is going to rest on how well does Miles Rice shoot on off the dribble threes. Maybe David Coyd as well. Those 2 guys. And how well does Elijah Saunders shoot? Isaiah Watts is going to shoot, but his defense is probably going to limit just how much he can play. But Elijah Saunders, you really have to hope is the level of shot maker he can be, and not the level of shot maker he has been at times. So that's really what it's going to rely on, because you kind of know what to expect from some of your other guys out there.
Me Terp asked a lot about the defensive philosophy here for Buzz, but so I think we've covered that pretty good here. But he specifically mentioned or asked about full court pressure. I don't remember seeing this Buzz team pick up full court all that often, or press really all that much. Bryce, am I missing something there?
No, they were not a press team a ton. They actually, I guess, they technically pressed almost 500 possessions last year. They were around they were pretty high in terms of percentage of possessions, but it's all like man pressure. It's just their guards will pick up higher, and I would really not expect that from this team this year. He has not historically been like a crazy high press guy, and he is not also notably not a coach that's going to try and trap or turn teams over in the full court. Really, that's not what they do. They will, when they have athletic guards, they will extend that pressure. Wade Taylor would pick up full court all the time. It's just kind of what he did. But they were not a hardcore press team by any means, and I wouldn't expect that. This group is even more so. Like Miles Rice is a notably worse athlete than Wade Taylor was in terms of his ability to really heat the ball up. Maybe Coit is different. I haven't seen enough of him to know, but my expectation would not be that this is a team that's pressing a ton.
Yeah, I agree. Cubs win 0-2 asked, we're hearing a lot about the ground and pound at A&M, but it sounds like Buzz has adjusted his offense at each stop. What insights from Marquette and Tate can you gather on style there? I think we've talked a good amount about the offense and past stops, so he's got a couple other questions. Said, hearing a lot of him riding the hot hand on the bench usage. Is that actually true, removing Wade Taylor? I mean, I think Buzz is equal opportunity, and we talked about this. If guys are doing what they're supposed to be, they're going to stay on the court, and if they're not, they're going to come off. And I don't think it's the percentage of shots that they've made. It's, are they doing the stuff to generate the types of shots that he wants to see out of the offense?
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, last year he had you'd really call it a 9-man rotation in terms of 9 guys played over 30% of minutes. CJ Wilcher was at 25%. So I wouldn't necessarily throw him in that. But generally, you're right. It's not really a hot hand thing as much as it's a, who is doing things correctly, or who is the best matchup for what we need here. Because it's rarely like, if you go look at usage, the usage to minute correlation is not really there. Pharrell Payne only played 50% of minutes. Manny Obaseki only played 40% of minutes, and they were both above 20 usage. Where Anderson Garcia played 60.7% of minutes and had like a 12 usage, right? Like, it's not going to be about like the hot hand necessarily. You could see that maybe with like a Watts, right? Like, okay, is
on a night he's making a lot of shots, maybe you give him a little more leash.
But it's going to be just as much about, can he survive defensively, which is something I'm not sure will be a consistent thing for him.
Last question is kind of along those lines. He said, anything X's and O's wise regarding Solomon Washington and his scoring output versus 2 years ago? If he can be closer to an 8 point per game than a 4 point per game guy, that would be a huge lift for them. I do expect him to creep up closer to that, like maybe 6.8, 7-ish kind of mark. Like, that seemed to be a thing for Buzz, where there were a lot of guys in that like 7 to 5-ish kind of range, and he's going to just be on the court so much. And if they are forcing more turnovers, I think Washington is a really good transition guy. I also think he'll be a good cutter, and maybe just Big Ten play will allow that, where the Big Ten is just not as athletic a league as the SEC, and he's going to have an athleticism advantage on more guys. So I could see him, cutting more or driving a little bit more and things like that, just to creep up the number just a bit. but nothing crazy different, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest difference I would say overall in his scoring output was nothing X's and O's, and it was just he shot 10% worse from three and 12% worse from the field overall, or excuse me, 12% worse from two, which ended up being about 14% worse from the field. He just was a worse offensive player in terms of the results last year. The truth is, college basketball is a small sample. Sometimes that just happens. The real question for Washington is, can he be fine enough making some corner shots here and there that he gets to really take full advantage of his cutting? He's a fine cutter. He's a good transition player. He doesn't have like crazy good feel, like just the truth. Like he doesn't have a ton of understanding of like how to get open for opportunities around the rim. It just kind of cut to where he thinks he's open, not necessarily cut to where he can get a pass. So I wouldn't expect anything crazy from him. And I'm not sure how much you seem more confident than me. I'm not sure how much he's going to be out there. I'm not sure he creeps up much above, he's been at 23 and 22 minutes per game the last 2 years. I'm not sure he creeps a ton above that. I think this team has a lot of wings that you can see contributing.
25 minutes is probably about the ceiling for someone like him.
Yeah, that would kind of be my guy. I mean, the only guys I would really expect to play a ton more than that, more than about 25 minutes, are Rice, potentially if he can stay out of foul trouble, Payne, and then maybe Saunders, if Saunders is like a 38% shooter, right? Like if he's, because Saunders is going to do all the things correctly defensively. Like that's just like an intuitive expectation.
So solid. Yeah, exactly.
But there's just so many wings on this team. Like even guys we haven't talked, and I don't know enough about it, but like there's just a lot of like 6'5" to 6'8" guys who are all fairly athletic and could all, help out in different ways. I mentioned Passmore, couple freshmen, Darius Adams and Josiah Harper. Like they're probably not going to factor a ton, but they could. Like if Washington just isn't making shots and one of those guys is, and they provide a similar level of athleticism in terms of their cutting and finishing, it's just going to be about how much can Washington's understanding of the defense keep them on the floor.
Yeah, and they'll want to keep these guys fresh and rotate through them a decent amount. So Mills, Turkson, some guys like that will get some opportunities here as well. Bryce, I think that's really all I had for you on my list of questions. Anything we didn't touch on that you found particularly interesting or you want to circle back to before we wrap this up?
Not a ton. I mean, the 5-year thing has been said a billion times, even though he was actually at Marquette for 6 years. That I feel like that goes way under discussed. But I just think Buzz Williams is a really good coach. I know this was a really good hire. I'm sure that the sting of Willard leaving hurts. And Willard was exciting because he showed, even if it was just kind of the one time, an aptitude to get NBA talent. And that's always fun for a school like Maryland, right? It's fun for them to be back to the level of good that they were last year. Like that was a fun team, even though it was kind of weirdly constructed at times. And I think Willard's a great coach too. Like it obviously hurts to lose someone like that, but I think Buzz Williams is a great coach, and he really is someone who, like he builds teams that it's easy to fall in love with, right? Because they're kind of scrappy and they're just like, you don't look at them and say, oh man, they're crazy talented. But they just win consistently. He is someone who has won everywhere he's gone. He has turned mediocre programs into really good ones, even without getting, at Texas A&M, he basically had in his whole time there, like 0 NBA players. And they were a consistently like really good to top. This year they were the 16th best team in the country, in the SEC. Like I think it's easy to forget that that's not like an expectation for Texas A&M. And so and when I went back and I watched, like, you don't watch him and think like, oh man, this is such great X's and O's. It's very simple stuff, especially offensively. But I do think he's a really good X's and O's coach in terms of he actually gets the guys to do it.
Yeah.
Like it's great to be a great X's and O's coach and that you can draw all this shit up or stuff up, excuse me, and really kind of make it look great on a whiteboard. It's a whole other thing to be watching and be like, oh man, look, this is like 10 straight defensive possessions where everyone has been in the right place every time. Like, how often does that happen on a college basketball court? And I think his teams get these weird reputations because they have, guys like, Wade Taylor and Zerfeld taking like bad shots here and there, that they're like these undisciplined, like crazy, high intensity, like
that's kind of what I
make
thought,
mistake stuff. But yeah, no, and you like, it feels like that's the reputation, but that's not it. Like they're a high level execution team. And it makes it easier to trust them, like in close games, right? Like it feels like when the chips are down, like this is a team that can make those tough decisions and be disciplined through that stuff. So I think this is a great hire. I think this is the type of guy who could have, who might have a chance to have that one breakthrough year where they're like the best team in the Big Ten at some point in his tenure here. And that's, obviously really as good as you can hope for. If you're the best in the Big Ten, then you have a chance to win a championship. And I think there is a world where he gets there, and it'll look so much different than any team that's won the Big Ten. And that'll be exciting in its own way. So I'm excited for this hire. I'm excited to see what he does at a level this big. I'm excited for him to be coaching NBA talent again, hopefully sometime in the next couple of years. And I just think he's a really good coach. I really had a blast watching this. I feel like I learned a lot because some of those preconceived notions were challenged, and it was a good learning experience. And it'll definitely be a team I'm watching a lot this year, if for nothing else than because I got to root for Miles. So I hope he does great. I'm like nervous that he's not quite good enough for the usage he's going to have, but I'm hopeful because I love him to death and I want nothing but the best for him.
Yeah, it's a guy that you just want to root for in general, and obviously you got the personal ties there too. So we'll be keeping tabs or keeping in touch throughout the season here. Maybe we can do one of these after the year and kind of wrap up on hey, what we saw that was different, or that sort of thing, just to recap a bit on this. But just for the listeners, Bryce put a ton of time into this and did the homework and grinded it out for me here. And this is a man that watches a ton of basketball already for his day job. So Bryce, thank you for fitting this in. I really appreciate it. I hope Maryland fans got something out of this and feel a little smarter about what they're going to see from this new coach. And hopefully, it comes true to form and he gets slightly better players here from the DC area and can take this thing to new levels. But thank you again. And before we get out of here, where can people catch up with all the great work that you do?
Absolutely. No, thank you. It's, as much draft work as I do, I rarely get to sit down and like break down stuff like this. This was a really, it was a fun challenge. I had a blast. So yeah, you can find all my stuff that I do publicly on my Twitter at Bryce Hendrick 14. Or I have the Upside Swings podcast. We're on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that stuff. But yeah, that's really it. But this was a blast. Really, truly, this was even more fun than I expected. And I obviously expected a lot of fun because it's the great Matt Modderno.
You're too nice, man. I owe you one big time. Still one of these years I want to get out there for the 3-on-3 tournament up there at Gonzaga. So if you still lacing them up sometimes if you're not sick of being on the court, maybe we can put that together.
Absolutely, get that blacktop hoop in. That's the best. It's a religion out here, man. The 3-on-3 stuff in Spokane it's a different level.
I love that. Cool. Bryce, thank you again. Again, everybody go check out Upside Swings. These guys are incredible. They'll get deep dives onto guys you've never even heard of that end up, playing 10 years in the NBA, and you'll have heard it there first from these guys. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please click the like button for us, rate, review, subscribe. All that stuff helps us grow the show and get more great guests like Bryce on, because it's worth their time because they know people will actually watch it and see it. So thank you guys for listening to this an hour and 20 minutes in. This will probably be the longest podcast we do, but felt like it was appropriate to do the deep dive here and really give Buzz his due. As always, fear the podcast, and we will catch y'all next time.